Man United need one, maybe even two centre-backs this summer. Names who are most prominently linked with United at this stage are Jean-Claire Todibo and Jarrad Branthwaite, with names like Marc Guéhi and Antonio Silva also being mentioned. However, I have two, maybe even three centre-backs who I think should be Manchester United's priority. I don't think they'll be able to get more than one, but I think at least one is attainable this summer, and even though they would be expensive, I think considering what the other options would cost, paying the extra money is more than worth it, and I think some of you will agree once you watch the full video. But before I come on to those two players, let's go through what United actually need in a new centre-back. So whoever the next manager is, United need a centre-back who in possession is comfortable inside his own box and defensive third in pressurised situations, having the progressive passing ability to thread passes into players between the lines and central positions, or switch play with a long pass out to the flank. Ball carrying ability would also be a valuable asset for United to have as well, giving United a variety of different ways to progress the ball forward, even when the opposition is closing off all the passing lanes further forward. Out of possession, they need to do all the basics to a very high level and rarely make errors. A front foot defender is ideal, someone who can read the game and anticipate passes into the opposition's forward line before stepping out and putting in a standing tackle or making an interception to win the ball back. But turning pace, acceleration and 1v1 defending ability in the channel is what United need to prioritise, as this will allow the side to use a high defensive line just like Arsenal, City and Tottenham do in order to compress the play and give United a vertically compact pressing shape, enabling them to press aggressively high up the pitch. Then you've also got other attributes like aerial dominance as well as positioning and marking inside of the box. Now obviously it's very rare to find a centre-back who excels in all of these, but you don't want someone with glaring weaknesses, and instead someone who's at least competent at all of these, excelling in a few, preferably in their ability to progress the ball forward in possession and play in a high defensive line, and of course be comfortable in defending in 1v1s in the channels. But before I analyse the likes of Todibo and Branthwaite, if you like me are excited for the upcoming Euros, go over to Jersey FIFA, they've got all the Euro 2024 jerseys, as well as the new jerseys for the upcoming season, as well as retro jerseys from international and club sides as well. If you use code Atlantis at checkout you'll get a discount, a link will be in my Instagram bio which I will leave linked in the description. So I think that centre-backs and defensive players in general are the hardest of all positions to judge, because I find that whilst you can get a pretty good gauge of how good a midfielder or a forward is based on extended compilations, with centre-backs you really have to watch full matches, or at least highlights of a player throughout a whole game, to really see what their weaknesses are. For example, someone like Aaron Wan-Bissaka can look incredibly good just from compilations, but when watching him throughout a whole game, you can see that even defensively, positionally he does switch off, mainly at the back post when the ball is in a crossing position, and you wouldn't be able to see this just from watching compilations. I've watched quite a bit of Todibo and Branthwaite, and I'm confident that if both came to United, they would excel, particularly Todibo. I would say the same of Antonio Silva and Marc Guéhi, who I do rate as well, but not with as much confidence. The issue I have with Branthwaite, Silva and Guéhi is that given that you're going to have to spend in excess of £50 million, up to maybe 60 or 70, I'm just not sure they're worth that, particularly with the other options I'm going to suggest. I think for that price you want an elite level centre-back who not only excels when it comes to playing those incisive passes into players between the lines, but also someone who is highly competent in 1v1s. I still have doubts as to whether Guéhi and Silva are really elite level defenders, who are comfortable consistently moving out into the channels and defending against quick attackers. I think Guéhi, Silva and particularly Branthwaite are fairly good in possession, especially Branthwaite when it comes to playing those longer passes forward, but I think for the price that they would cost, I would prefer a centre-back with better incisive passing ability, who can break the lines of the opposition midfield with ground passes into players centrally. For me, Todibo is the one of the four I'd happily sign, and it's not just because he'd cost around £20 to £30 million less, but also because I think he's the best of the three when it comes to defending in 1v1s in the channels. He's the most comfortable on the ball in his own defensive third under pressure, and he has the sort of incisive passing ability to play progressive passes through the centre, which I think is essential. To partner Todibo, I'd bring in a left-sided centre-back who could also play as a left-back if needed. But before I tell you who that player is, let me tell you about my two dream right-sided centre-back options that I would prefer ahead of Todibo if money wasn't a factor. The first would be Ousmane Diomande, who I have spoken about before, and Sporting would probably demand around £65 million for him. I'm not sure if he has a release clause, if it does it's around that amount. Ronald Araujo, however, would be my number one target. I think he probably would be attainable, but he'd be very expensive. He has 2 years left on his contract, and with Barcelona's financial issues, I think they'd be willing to sell for between £80 to £90 million. And that of course is if Araujo was willing to join United. But for me, Orejo is already one of the best, if not the best centre-back in world football, up there with the likes of Rudiger, Diaz and Van Dijk. Having watched him multiple times for Barcelona this season, he's really impressed me, having the physicality and pace to deal with forwards who drop off and look to receive the ball to feet, as well as being one of the best centre-backs in world football at defending in the channels. So much so that Xavi would even switch him to right back and move Koundé to centre back in order for Orejo to defend against Vinicius Jr. in Barcelona's right-sided channel. Like Orejo, Diomande also has the physicality and the pace to perform this wide centre-back role in the rest defence, but obviously given his age, he's understandably not as good an overall defender as Orejo is at the moment. However, both Diomande and Orejo are excellent progressive passers, particularly when it comes to playing passes through the centre of the opposition system. Diomande in particular is probably one of the best centre-backs that you'll see in possession, as he's fantastic technically, being a very good progressor of the ball, as the passing and possession sections of his FB Ref report this season in the Primera Liga shows. Although given the amount of signings that United need to make this summer, and the cost of either Diomande or Orejo, having thought it over, I'd probably still go with Todibo. But for the left-sided centre-back, given that Jared Branthwaite would likely cost between £55 to £65 million, I think I'd just rather spend a bit extra and get one of the best and most versatile modern centre-backs in the game, and that is Alessandro Bastoni. Bastoni does have a contract at Inter Milan until 2028, but given Inter Milan's financial situation, I think an offer of between £65 to £75 million could tempt them. Italian players do sometimes prefer to stay in Italy, but at the moment we don't know Bastoni's stance on a move to United, but I do think the likes of Barada and Ashworth could convince him of the project and his role in it, and so hopefully they could persuade him. And even though he would be expensive, I think he'd definitely be worth it, because he's arguably the most complete centre-back in world football, with the versatility to play either as a left centre-back or a left-back in a back four, or as a left-sided centre-back in a back three, which is where he plays for Inzaghi's Inter Milan. This versatility would enable him to switch for Lisandro Martinez, moving from a central position to a wider position throughout different phases of play. From a defensive point of view, Bastoni is exactly what United need. Very quick when turning, capable of playing in a high line, excellent tackling technique, a solid 1v1 defender in the channel, tall and physical, whilst also having the stature and size to potentially be aerially dominant if he does improve this part of his game. But it's in possession where Bastoni really comes into his own, and from a tactical point of view, I think he would offer United something that pretty much no other centre-back in world football could. I mean, just look at his FB Ref report over the past 365 days when compared against every other centre-back in Europe's top 5 leagues. He ranks in the 99th percentile, which is the top 1%, for his XG assisted, his expected assists, his key passes, passes into the penalty area, crosses into the penalty area, as well as ranking around the 85th percentile for his overall progressive passes and his passes into the final third, all while being a statistically dependable retainer of possession, and this is just the passing and chance creation section of his FB Ref report. In terms of his ball carrying, he's just as good, ranking in the top 1% for his progressive carries, carries into the final third, and into the penalty area, meaning that Bastoni ranks in the top 1% of centre-backs in Europe for 8 key metrics of a ball-playing defender. Alongside this, he also has incredible athleticism and physicality, being 6'3" in height, and quite well coordinated in 1v1 situations and when turning for such a tall player. The statistics tell it all, but just by watching him, you can also see how complete he is, being a creative threat via his crossing, passing, ball carrying and runs off of the ball, and I think he would work perfectly either in a Roberto De Zerbi or a Thomas Frank system, as of course he currently does under Inzaghi. But whoever the Manchester United manager is next season, Bastoni would be a dream signing and someone who could be a tactical game changer. I would say stylistically he's a mixture between Theo Hernandez and Mickey van der Ven, with the physicality and defensive ability of Nathan Ake. In either a Kieran McKenna or a Roberto De Zerbi build-up system, the horizontal compactness between the centre-backs and central midfielders is going to vacate a lot of space behind the opposition's midfield line if they choose to press United high, whilst if the wide midfielders sit narrow, then this affords United's fullbacks even more space on the flanks. Let's say after the transfer window it's Onana in goal, Lisandro Martinez and Todibo, with Kobbie Mainoo and maybe someone like Ezequiel Palacios, which gives you 5 players inside of the box against the opposition's 4, with United's keeper being one of the best ball-playing keepers in world football, Martinez and Todibo, who are two very good ball-playing centre-backs who are extremely comfortable in these tight and congested areas whilst under pressure, having the composure, vision and passing technique to find those incisive passes beyond the midfield line into either of the players sitting ahead of the midfield double pivot. But in regards to Bastoni, what I really like is that he can alternate with Martinez, being able to play as a left-sided centre-back or as a left-back, with Martinez alternating between the two, depending on what United need from that central centre-back. Now in the build-up phase under either McKenna or De Zerbi, at full-back Bastoni would be able to exploit the space in behind the opposition's higher midfield line, particularly if the front four stay high, and pin the opposition's backline backwards. Bastoni would only have to get goal side of the opposition's right-sided midfielder, and then from here his long strides could allow him to exploit that space, not just in behind the midfield line but also in behind the centre-back. If the false nine's movement deep drags the centre-back high up the pitch, vacating that space centrally. But also in the middle third with Bastoni at left-back, this would allow United's manager to then push Lisandro Martinez forward into the midfield line, or allow Dalot to invert from the right, with Bastoni well suited to playing that deeper position in possession in the middle third, being a progressive threat for his passing and dribbling, and potentially getting in behind the backline with his third man runs from deep as well. And Bastoni is not just a creative threat via his elite level crossing both from deep positions, but also for his goal scoring alongside his ball progression. Inzaghi encourages Bastoni to carry on his runs forward and join the attack in the final third, entering the box at the back post with his size and power, making him a significant aerial threat. Now in possession, if Bastoni is not pushing forward into the final third, he can be a valuable asset in the rest defence as well. Being capable of pushing up high in a 1-3 rest defence in the final third, dealing with quick wingers spinning in behind and having to turn and race back into the channel, whilst also being capable of sitting deeper as a sweeper as well, reading the game and using his pace, athleticism and physicality to move out and sweep up long passes into the channel. Even though he'd be expensive, costing between £65 and £75 million, and would command a wage of around £12 to £14 million per season I'd estimate, I think Bastoni would be worth it, particularly with Lisandro Martinez or Luke Shaw at either centre-back or left-back next to him, as this would give him the defensive security to push further forward and become an even greater threat in the opposition's final third. So do you think Manchester United should sign Bastoni? Let me know in the comment section below, and check out some of my other videos and the Patreon linked in the description.